Hello, everybody. Hello. How is the sound today? Hello, everybody. So great to see you. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I see we have several people here already in the chat. Hello, everybody. Today we are doing block 4, and you'll see on the screen I've updated 5 block dates coming up. There's one exception that's not on a Friday. You'll see the little asterisk. July the 18th is going to be on a Monday. Hello, everybody. So great to see you. Y'all, we have a simpler block today. So much easier than the last 2 blocks we've done with a lot less pieces. And I think there's so many different variations you could do with this block. Hello, everybody. I'm going to give it a second for everybody to come on in. So this past week I've been experimenting with settings. So I'm hoping that the cameras are not going to be glitching today. I had to do some research and watch some videos about camera settings. And so I'm curious to see today if we have any glitching with the cameras. I hope not. I also hope that the microphone doesn't stop working this week. I think it was just an overload for my computer with the settings I was using, and it just shorted out the microphone, so maybe I fixed it this week. I hope so. Hello, everybody. Anitra said, this block almost looks like reverse applique. I agree. I'm going to show you the larger block that I've done, the alternative block. It's the big one. And then I'm going to show you, I've already made this block once as part of the sample. Yeah, Sylvia said, fingers crossed, no problems today. I hope so. We shall see. We'll see. So let me bring it over to the cutting mat today. Oh, and also stay tuned to the end because I'm going to show you a preview of next week's block, okay? So here's our pattern, very simple for today. We're doing a primitive heart, and I called it a primitive heart because it's not the shorter, squattier, more fuller heart, right? It's sort of elongated. And I kind of really love that. So as far as my sample goes, I did include this block in the little sample, so we get to look at it here. So many different things you could do with this block. And I'll show you that here in a minute when we go to fuse the pieces in place. But your free PDF for the 5-inch is down in the description box. You can grab this. Y'all, I don't know that it's imperative that you trace from the back side if you're using a fusible, because the shapes are kind of, what do you call it? They're the same, symmetrical. You could do it trace from either side and you get the same shape. So that's nice, right? Let me bring over my bigger block. This is the pattern for the bigger block, y'all. And I don't know if you've noticed, if you've been getting the bigger blocks, there's a link for in the description box for these two. I've been updating each week this second page. And so the quilt is taking progress right up here, right? And then I don't know that I'd print this page out. If you're doing every single one of the big blocks, I don't know that I'd print this page because that stays the same. But then you get a full-size placement if you would like to use that. And then your tracing templates. For the bigger one, I cut out the inside of the bigger heart. I think that's why it looks like the reversed applique. And then if you wanted to include the words, they're on the last page. And then this box has a detailed description of what I did to my bigger block. So that changes from week to week too, because each block I'm doing a little differently. Y'all, okay, so the first 3 blocks are super cute, right? They really are. But I'm going to tell you why this one really just has a special place in my heart, and it's because it's the first quilt. I'm doing mine as little mini quilts. It's the first quilt that I ever hand quilted. And I used some big stitches, and I used a pearl cotton and a DMC thread to quilt it. And I just love it so much. I just love it so much. So this is the bigger one. I've cut out the inside and offset the smaller heart, right? All of this stitching I did with a chain stitch, which gives a bolder line, right? And I can read this. Like when I put it up on the wall behind me and I step away, I can really read what it says. But there's something about this hand stitching that I absolutely love. So I got the stuff and I think I'm going to hand quilt our block today. We'll see how we're doing on time. So that is the larger block. I'm not going to lie, this took me a few minutes. This took me a good part of my morning one day. But I really enjoyed it. So I used to find doing anything by hand really annoying. And there's been a transition, y'all. And the last couple months I've been really enjoying the handwork. And this was a great way to start my day in the morning. It took me about 2.5 hours to do this. I just put on some music and just enjoyed the process. But if that does not interest you, right? You want to do the larger block, you want the words, but you don't want to hand stitch them. Try using a fabric marker, or if you have any of these micron pins, these work really well on fabric too, and you can get a nice look. You can put the words, but not do all of the hand stitching, okay? If you would have asked me to make this block a year ago, I would have gone in this direction versus this direction, okay? No right way, no wrong way. You do it however is good for you. So let me pull over my little box here. I've already picked out some black pearl cotton to do some hand quilting. And I have a few other things. I have a size 24 chenille needle if we do that. I've already picked out my charms for today. I'm going with this. It's sort of like a burnt sienna color on the back and a lighter, almost tea stained muslin color on the front. And I've cut out my 2 pieces for the applique. So let's get this iron warming up. Oh, Danielle said, I've used a thin zigzag stitch to do the writing. Yes! Well, that's perfect. So it's stitched, but I'm sure it probably went faster than what I did. Jackie said, I'm finding that the older I get, the more patient I am. Yes, maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm just developing patience the older I get. It could be. So let me go ahead and just remove this stuff off the back, the paper off the back. Just 2 little pieces this week, y'all. You know what you could do with this heart? Let's talk about some of the variations with the smaller block. You could, let me pull this over. You could cut out the center of this heart and do it just like the bigger block, right? You could trace it just like here, trace from here onto with your fusible or your freezer paper and cut out that center heart. That would be adorable. In the first block that I did, I placed the applique just like this, centered right in there, probably how I'm going to do it today. But you could off-center it just as well, like that. Let me put it on here, like that. And that would be super cute. You could place it like that. You could place it like this and still cut out the center portion of this heart. So I'm really curious to see all of the different blocks from week 4 on the Creative Crew, because y'all have been keeping me updated and updating everybody else. Y'all have done all kinds of variations, adding things to the blocks, and I love that. I love that you're thinking outside of the box. It's been a lot of fun to see. I certainly don't have time to comment on every single thing, but just know that I do see it. And I like, that's one of my highlights of the day, is to go through and look at y'all's pictures. All right, so let's go ahead and get this glue basted, right? So I don't forget to do that. We'll put that on there. You'll notice I'm cutting my Warm and Natural batting out exactly 5 inches, but my charms have a pinked edge, so they're actually a little bit slightly bigger than 5 inches. My batting is exactly 5 inches, and these charms, that pinked edge goes and extends beyond that just a little bit. Let's see, I don't want to go too hot. Let's just dry that glue. Tammy said my face is blurry. Oh no. Tammy, try leaving and coming back and see if that doesn't update and refresh the way the video looks. All right, so that will be cooling off. And I think, y'all, for my block, I'm going to do it exactly the way that this block shows. And I'm going to center the smaller applique on top of the bigger one. And that's the way I'm going to do mine. Tinker said, what kind of iron is that? It is a steam-fast cordless iron. I do have a link if you want to check it out. It was like $30-some. I'll put a link in the description box so you could go over and take a look at all of the specs on it and sort of compare it to the other cordless irons. Okay, so one of the things that I want to make sure that I do is not position the heart too close to the top and the bottom, right? Because we're going to have our sashing come over. I'm not worried about the sides on this block. So what I'm going to do is take a friction pin, and you might find this like a really good tip. Okay, I like to sometimes mark my seam allowance. This will disappear with some heat. And just give myself a little seam allowance line, because that sashing is going to come over into this block eventually. Right there. Actually, because this is going to be on the top row, the binding is going to come over on the top and sashing at the bottom of this block. So now I know that like my boundaries, and I won't cut any parts of my applique off. So I'm just going to eyeball it, y'all, and just put it just like that. And I'm actually, instead of right in the center, ooh, I like that. I'm going to, instead of centering that smaller heart, I'm going to bring it up towards the top a little bit. And now we'll just heat set that. See how those marks disappear like that? All right, and now let's go ahead and glue base this top layer into place. Just a little bit of glue here and there. And we're centering right over top. I was messy with it. And we're going to dry that glue. So what I have in my sewing machine is I have some black thread in the top and also in the bobbin. Today, what thread am I using today? What is that? Oh, okay, so it's black thread. It's a polyester thread from YLI. All right, so that's what I'm using in both the top and the bobbin today. Wanda said, do you ever use embroidery thread to stitch down your pieces? I haven't yet, Miss Wanda, on this project. Oh, let me take a look. That might not be so. Not on these smaller blocks. I have not. Now, did I do it? On the puppy, on my big block on the puppy, I used embroidery thread to stitch down his nose, and I did a blanket stitch, and it turned out super, super cute. I think there's a close-up picture of it in the Etsy listing for the puppy block. If you scroll through those pictures, you'll see it looks great. So in my bigger blocks, because everything is bigger, I think it's a lot easier to play around and have some fun with different threads and things like that. And on my bigger blocks, I am using a mix of machine sewing and hand sewing. Oh, machine embroidery thread. Well, today I'm using machine quilting thread. But I often, like if you watch the Hummingbird Mosaic, I did a lot of the quilting with embroidery thread. If you skip in that series to the quilting section, I show a lot of the threads, and they're almost all embroidery threads. All right, I think that's cooled off. I think for my applique today, I'm going to do a blanket stitch on the sewing machine. And then we'll come back. And I think I would kind of really like to do some hand quilting, some big stitch that goes by pretty quick. Maybe an echo of the heart. I think that would be cute with a black thread so that it stands out. All right, so let me switch on over to the sewing machine. Here we go, and I have to move my stool because it's a little distance away. All right. So I have my open toe foot on, so hopefully you can see, and I moved my camera this week, so maybe this angle is a little better. We shall see. What do you think? A blanket stitch. All right, so for many of you, I know a lot of y'all are super new. So let me just show you what a blanket stitch setting looks like on your machine so you can see if you have it. Check out your sewing machine for a little knob or a little button that looks like that. That is what I call a blanket stitch. There's a couple different names for it, but that's the stitch that I'm using today. So there's the blanket stitch, and I already know that I don't want to use the default settings. So let's play around with some settings. Let's make it a little bit wider, and I just have some scraps here, so let's just take a look and see what that looks like. All right, I kind of really like that. See that? All right, so for my machine, the stitch length is a 2.4. I keep looking here. 2.4, and the width is a 3.0. So you could start there and adjust if you want to use the blanket stitch. All right, so I'm going to be looking over here. Hopefully my microphone doesn't stop while I'm stitching like it did last week. The good news is I'm only going to be over here for a few minutes because this isn't going to take that long. Y'all are going to breeze through this block. All right. So the blanket stitch comes over into the applique, and then the needle, when it goes straight, I'm having it ride right next to the edge of the applique. All right, so anytime you need to adjust with doing the blanket stitch, make sure your needle is in the right hand position, not over in the applique, but right next to the applique. I want to thank Sheila for sending me a text message before we started to remind me to clean out the bobbin and change my needle. Fortunately, I changed my needle this morning. I did. I didn't clean out my machine though. But I already knew she was running pretty smoothly, so I'm going to wait a little bit before cleaning out my bobbin. I'm working on a t-shirt quilt. You might see it behind me. Once I get the borders on that, I'll probably do a good clean out. I think this blanket stitch is going to be gorgeous on this heart. And we're coming back to where we started, and I know it's going to be hard to see because that black thread blends in really good to this red. This is a red flannel. So I'm just going to take a couple stitches beyond that first stitch that I did, and I'm going to pull this away. I'm going to grab my chenille needle today. It's usually with a zigzag stitch. You can kind of lock that in place, right? The blanket stitch. A lot of the times I like to take this top thread and just thread a needle with it and bring that right to the back. All right. I do this a lot in quilting too. So that gives a really nice clean finish on the front, right? And then I've got a little bit of a mess to clean up where it started. Then we can actually tie this into just like a double knot. And we can bury these threads so that the blanket stitch is nice and secure. It's knotted off. And then we'll hide those thread tails right in the middle. Let's see, where's my little needle threader? I'm going to put both those threads right through my needle threader. Just a little bit. We're going to thread that needle and bury those threads right in the middle. See that? There we go. So they're nice and secure. I have a little bit of a mess where it started because my machine is set up to take a couple of stitches in place, like dot, 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 and then it starts going. And so it makes a little bit of a little cluster on the back. Okay. I think I'm going to use the same blanket stitch, but I'm going to make it not come over as wide. So let's just lower that to a 2.4. So both my length and my width on this blanket stitch are 2.4. And let's make sure we're starting in the right. There we go. Now this stitch will be harder for you to see because it's black thread on black fabric. So you might have a harder time seeing it. I'm going to go ahead and bury that thread right in there. Where's my needle? Let's take this thread right to the back. Right to the back. There we go, so that's on the back. You'll see I really slowed down on these curves up at the top. Did you notice how I fussy cut that little rose in the center of that little heart? All right, coming up to where we started. And then I'm going to pull that away we'll come back to the cutting mat. And we're going to just bury that top thread right on in there. There we go. There we go. All right. So let me bury this top thread before I lose my needle. And then I'll check to see if we had any questions that I can help with. I love these chenille needles. They have a bigger eye to thread these threads through. There we go. Hello everybody coming on in. Catherine said, I noticed the fussy cutting right away. Isn't that pretty? It really is. Let's tie these threads. I'm thinking my Juki has a setting that I can stop that messy section right at the beginning. I'll have to check out the manual for that. Let's bury these first two threads. Got my little handy dandy needle threader. That makes it a lot faster. Most of the time. There's the first one. There we go. This quilting thread is a little slippery, so it's not the easiest to work with while doing a live demo. We're going to make it work though. There we go. Slippery or not. All right, and let's tie off this where we started. There's two threads where we started. I'm just doing a little double knot. There we go. Skinny little threads. Skinny little threads. All right, there's the first one. It might just be easier just to put that through there like that. There we go. And pull it through. Because those are slippery. All right, so we have a cleaned up back. I'm going to try to pick out that little thicker places right there because I really want that to be as pretty as the front. And here we are from the front. So you could just stop here, right? Because your block is quilted at this point if you do the stitching of your applique with all of your layers. Now, if you stitch the applique before creating all of your layers, you might want to do some additional quilting. That's up to you, right? Ah, Mary Ann said, my Epic does this too. It's called a fixed stitch. What a mess on the back. I know. I'm wondering. Oh, Hazel, yours does it too. I'm going to break out the manual to see if I can't cut that out. There's got to be a way to turn something off. Sharon, it's your first time here. I'm so glad you're here. All right, so let's scoot this over because we're doing good on time today. That was the short little pieces. So let's go ahead and do some big stitch quilting. I think that would be lovely. All right, so for me, what I found was really helpful on my bigger block is if I took a marking pin that was going to disappear and sort of plan out where I wanted to stitch so that my lines kind of stayed straight. I did, on my big one, I did sort of an inner border. And that was like a half an inch away from the binding. And then I did an echo of my hearts. And so I just took, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, I took my marking pen and I marked out a design before I started stitching it, so I wouldn't just be doing willy-nilly lines, right? So let's do that. I still want to keep my quilting. Remember, we're going to have that 1/4 of an inch. I want to keep my quilting away from that. So let's go even closer to this one. Right? And I'm just eyeballing this one. We're just going to eyeball it. But I don't want this hand quilting to get cut off. By the sashing or by the binding. But I think that would be lovely, don't you? You could even do a couple of just freestanding hearts here and there. All right. So let's pull off a good little amount of thread. This is an 8-weight pearl cotton, the Wonderfill, which I really love. And let's thread a needle with it. My eyes are wanting to play games with this lighting. All right. I also think it's time to go get my eyes rechecked. Okay, so for doing the hand quilting, I'm not going to put a knot. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead because someone else recommended to do this. Let's go ahead and put a little knot at the end. All right, we're going to trim that knot off when we're done. So we don't have to worry about pulling that thread all the way out. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring my needle right inside the heart, and the knot's going to just live there for a minute. All right. So I'm going to bring my needle right here and travel and bring my needle up on the little line that I marked, which might be difficult because we stitched that. Yeah, so let's start somewhere else. Let's start like right there. There we go. All right, so my knot's just going to live there for a minute. All right. Now, just a little pre-warning. This might be shaky a little bit. And I have not gotten to a point where all of my stitches are exactly the same, the spacing the same, none of that stuff. But my hand quilting has a quirkiness to it that really is super cute. So if your stitching isn't all exactly the same, I don't know that I would be, with this project, I don't know that I would be that concerned with it because it's just going to look very homespun, very hand done, and quirky. I mean, I tried to get my stitches the same and spaced out the same, but it's just not going to happen for me yet because I just haven't done it that much, right? But I have found, especially with my hand stitching, the more you do it, the better you get and the more consistent you get. So maybe one day if I continue this hand quilting stuff, all of my stitches will be perfect. My needle isn't quite long enough to do like a couple stitches at a time. So you'll see I'm just doing one stitch at a time. they do have needles that you could probably take a couple of these bigger stitches at one time before pulling the thread through. Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you. It's Friday. Does anybody have any big plans this weekend? I think the kids are coming over tomorrow for a Father's Day dinner and Harlan's birthday, because we were actually camping during his birthday. Annette said, my granddaughter said, that lace around the big heart would be as cute as an embellishment. Oh, it would, as an embellishment. Yes. That's a good idea. Danielle said, could you do these stitches with a wide straight stitch with your machine? A wide straight stitch. Oh, yes, like a long straight stitch. I'm sure you could. And depending on the thread you use, you'll get different looks, right? If you use a really thin thread, the line's going to definitely show up, especially if you use a darker color. But if it's a straight stitch and you're using a thinner thread, your line will just look thinner than what this looks like, right? And you won't have the spacing. It's going to be a continuous line, but that's okay. I would try it out and see what it looks like. What I did discover, though, is that my Juki, I don't know if it's technically a bean stitch. I could be wrong. But the Juki has a setting that does like a double straight stitch. And that gives you a little bit of a thicker line. It's still continuous, like it doesn't skip places, but it does give you more of a look of a bean stitch. So I was playing around with different settings I hadn't used in my machine yet the other day. Helen said, if you use your stitch for sewing stretchy, it goes ahead, saves 3 times in 1 or 2 stitches, then goes back. I think that's going to be super cute, right? I'm really digging this hand quilting look, y'all. I really am. Now, I don't know that I would have the patience to do a whole quilt like this, but I know some of y'all do. And I've seen some of y'all's hand quilted quilts, and they were stunning. Who was it? I think it was Joyce sent me some pictures the other day of some hand quilting she had done. It was outstanding. I'm not there yet, but for small projects like this, I love it. But see, I'm more of the big stitch quilting. See how big my stitches are? And see how far apart they're spaced? It's something that just says quaint or just looks kind of homespun to me. And I love it. Let's see, going into that valley, let's make this one a little bit bigger. There we go. What was I doing? Oh, I didn't mean to come up all the way through there, did I? I did not. So let's go back in that hole. I lost my train of thought of what I was doing. There we go. That happens often. I usually like traveling on the front of the project instead of going to the back. Just traveling around on the front. See, and this didn't take too terribly long. We're almost back to where we started. Ah, Betty said this block is her favorite one so far. Let's see, do we have space to fit one more stitch in there? Let's try it. I don't want to cram them up too much right there. All right, so we still have the knot right there. We're going to take care of that here in a second. For this one, I am going to go back to the back. All right, let's try that. There's my last stitch. They're a little crammed in there. All right, so let's go ahead and do just this. Might not be exactly right, y'all. I'm going to just try to do a little knot close to the edge, close to that fabric as I can. And then I'm going to take this thread and we're going to pull it right down into the middle. Travel some distance away. Try to pull that knot. It's a thicker thread, so that knot doesn't really want to pop back through that layer. That's okay. So there we go. That's the back. Isn't that cute? I want to take care of this. I'm going to try to fix that. But it's the back, right? So the front, let's go ahead and pop that thread, that little knot. And there's the beginning thread, and that's buried in the quilt. So there we go. Let's go ahead and heat up that line and make that disappear. Yeah, there's so many different things you could do with this block, y'all. I hope you get creative and have fun with it. You could make a whole quilt with just this one little 5-inch block. Wouldn't that be adorable? Lisa said, so you're not going through the back. Not when I bury my threads. All right, my quilting did travel through the back. See the little stitches? Jane said, have you ever done, I'm going to mess up how to say that, Jane. No, I have not. But I think doing this would be good practice for that, right? Because that's sort of big, longer stitches, isn't it? Yeah, that's super pretty. So let's get rid of those little marks that I gave myself a reference for. There we go. They're gone. And we just have our little block left. Let's bring this in. So here's what we have so far. There, it'll lay flat like that. There's the first 3 blocks, y'all. If this is your first time watching, if you check out the description box, there's a playlist of videos so you can catch up, right? If you want to do this quilt, you only have 3 blocks at this point to catch up before this week, right? And so let's just pretend like the sashing is done. So that's the very first top row. And in my quilt, I'm going to do rows of 4. So there's the first row. We have 1, 2, 3 more rows to go. I will look into it, Jane, because I really enjoy doing those stitches there. So let me just give you another little tip, because if you're struggling with the sashing pieces, when I showed my demo, and I have a link to this video in the description box too. When I showed the demo, I used a 1-inch strip on the back and on the front. And I showed a little tip with a piece of like poster board or cardboard for getting the edges turned over on your top sashing. Well, for this quilt, I found this black flannel. I don't know if you'll see the details. See that? Is that what they call herringbone? I don't know. But it's a flannel, and it is super duper thick. Like, I don't know if you can see that. It is super thick, but I really wanted to use it. So I tried the 1-inch. I still used 1-inch strip on the back, and that's perfect, right? But on the front, because this flannel is so thick, I struggled. So for mine, I am cutting my top strip at 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches for my top strip because of the thickness of the flannel. I was struggling. So that does make it easier, but I don't know if you can see this either. See the definition of the thickness of my sashing? Because I'm a touchy-feely kind of person and I like texture, I love it, but the sashing is much thicker on this quilt. I love it, but I did have to make that adjustment because of the thickness of the flannel. So if you're struggling with that 1 inch on the front, try 1.5 inches and see if that's not easier for you. So she's going to go there. And that's going to go over like that. So there's my very first row. Don't you dig that hand quilt thing? Block number 5, which we're doing next Friday, is going to come right down here for me. Y'all can mix up these blocks if you want to, but we're going to do a primitive star. Another super easy block, y'all. Very simple shape. Again, this one, it's not going to much matter if you trace from the front or the back, right? So you don't have to worry about mirror imaging for freezer paper or for heat and bond or fusibles. And she's going to go right down here for me, like that. I think this block also lends for some hand quilting. I guess we'll wait and see next week. So my first one, there we go. You see I got really close to the top, and I also messed up my sashing there. So I'll be paying really close attention and marking my block next week so that I can sort of center this a little bit better in there. But see that? That's what she's going to look like. Jackie said, I'm using my clover loop pressing bar and the 1/2 inch size. Sylvia, I saw your quilt, your little alphabet. That was so cute. That was many more blocks than what we're doing for this one. So you're thinking of doing a quilt and just these hearts with lace around them. That would be adorable. That really would. So there she is. I kind of love the fussy cut flower in the middle. So I think for sure y'all are stretching yourselves beyond your normal comfort levels. I see many of you trying out new techniques that you haven't tried out before. And I love that you're sharing your progress. So keep up the good work. This is where we are. Let me go back because some of y'all came in after we started. Here's the dates for the upcoming next 5 blocks if you want to jot them down. Most of the time we're here on Fridays. You'll notice most of these dates are on Fridays. There's one exception here, so that's really why I wanted to show you that. Jackie, you're welcome. I think the hand stitch was well worth it, right? Super cute. Teresa said another fun one. Yep, this one is really fun because all the different variations you could do with it. And it's simple, right? Not a lot of pieces to this one. Wanda's rediscovering so many stitches on her machine. Isn't it funny, Wanda, when we go to buy a sewing machine, we look to see how many stitches it has. And then we get the machine home and we hardly use any of them. We use the same 4 or 5 stitches over and over, and I'm super guilty. Today I used a blanket stitch. That is one of my favorite stitches to do with applique, is the blank. And a zigzag is my favorite go-to stitches. And I have a hard time like just branching out and trying something new, but like how many 80, 90, 100 different stitches in the machine, and I use the same 4 or 5. Yeah, right, Marianne? Yes. Like that, when I saw the stitches of the juke, I was like, whoa, look how many stitches it has. And then for 4 years, 4 years, how long have I had this machine? Same 4 or 5 stitches I use every single day. Annette, I'm so glad you get to hang out with your granddaughter today. That's awesome. Okay, everybody. Well, I hope you have a super fun week. Make sure to post your pictures. Everybody would love to see it. Not only that, all the different variations. I think your variations and your blocks are sparking ideas of other people. So thank you for sharing. Danielle, I'm so glad these videos are helpful. It's one of the main reasons why we're doing this series, right? So that we can try out new techniques we haven't tried. So we can brush up on our skills on some techniques that we've tried before, and maybe our skill level wasn't there yet, but maybe it is now. But one thing's for sure is we're never going to improve if we don't work with this stuff, right? So these small little blocks are great for practicing, trying new things. And look, here's the thing. It's a 5-inch block, a 5-inch square on the back, a small piece of batting, a 5-inch square on the front, and very minimal amounts of fabric for the applique. If you were to try something new and mess this up, it's not like we're throwing out an entire quilt because it's ruined, right? So don't be afraid to try some hand stitching if you haven't tried it before. What's the worst thing? You pick it out or you ditch it and start another block. Laura, I'm so glad you're having so much fun. Saving my crappy blocks and including in my quilt to show my progression. You know what? And I think you're going to be really glad that you did, because I actually love going back and looking at some of my first quilts. I don't dread that. I actually love it because I get a sense of accomplishment. Like, look where I was and where I am. Am I perfect now? Absolutely not. Do I still have a lot to learn? Yes. Do I do some things? Some things like the hand quilting and a little knot showing on the back. Yeah, I want to learn how to not do that. But guess what? One day I'm going to look back and say, oh, I was still doing little knots on the back. I look at some of my earlier quilts and I say, I didn't know how to do a binding. I do very beautiful bindings now, machine stitch bindings, but I do very beautiful bindings now. All of my earlier quilts, no bindings. So it's a lot of fun to go back and to revisit where you were and to see where you've come from. Amazing Andrea's binge watching all the fun videos. I'm going to tell you, there's some really amazing creators here on YouTube. You will never find a shortage of quilting content creators here on YouTube. I'm going to tell you that. Y'all, I'm just like a little speck in YouTube world. There are lots and lots of channels. So, yeah, you could probably binge watch every day quilting videos and not view the same video twice. Isn't that awesome, y'all? Like when I first started quilting, 1999, 1994, there was none of this stuff. How awesome is YouTube? I think it's fantastic. Oh, thank you, Sheila. Yep, I got to put the outside borders are not on. They're just pinned to the wall. So that's what I'm doing this afternoon, y'all. Wanda said, I forgot to purchase the larger puppy block. Can I still get it? Yep, it's still in the Etsy shop. The only thing is, Miss Wanda, is the week that the block, like this one, the week that the block comes out, it's on sale. So that's like the best time to get it. But yeah, it's still in there. Joyce said, when I found out how to pop the thread through, I thought, wow, why didn't I think of that? Yes. I've got to figure out, Joyce, a better way to finish my hand quilting on the back with the thicker thread, because I've got a little knot there that doesn't want to pull through the back. Laura, thank you. Weren't some of my first videos a hot mess? I'm going to tell you. They were. They were a hot mess. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Hazel. Linda said, then it becomes a mug rug. Yes, that's a good idea. I'm not sure what Froggy the Gremlin means. All right, everybody. Joyce said, bury it in the batting instead of knots. I know, I'm just so scared it's going to pull out, though. Those bigger stitches, they won't pull out. Like, I get it with the button because but with the big stitch quilting, it won't pull out. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try that next time. Betty, you are so sweet. I think you're partial. I think you're partial because you love me and I love you. All right, everybody. So it hasn't pulled out. All right, Joyce, I'm going to try that next time. The next time you see me do some hand quilting, I'm going to try it. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Thank you. I would tell him Happy Father's Day from all of you. He will appreciate that. I think he went out and bought a table saw day before yesterday, and he's working on some quilting frames. He has been so excited about that. So I will make sure to tell him. All right, everybody. I can't wait to see you next Friday. And until then, I'll be watching your updates on Creative Crew. I will, for sure. I will see you next Friday. Bye, everybody.